This is another long-distance call from New York City to the Fulton, New York area. And that noise you heard as the call was going through, as it turns out, that is a characteristic sound of the number one EAX, the first widely produced electronic switch by GTE Automatic Electric. I only encountered one in my actual phone travels, and that was my third stop in Rock Hill, South Carolina, 803324. I didn't record much, but there's just enough to get a sense of what that switch was like to dial from. So the first thing I wanted to establish here is, that is actually present anytime you're on the digit receiver while you're dialing a number. Calling from here, that seems to be the only time that you hear it. So just to establish that, yes, while you're dialing a number from this switch, that noise is on the line, let me play a slightly enhanced recording of a call to York 684. That's the small Bell System office that has the fluttery recording. There's a pause in the middle of dialing here and also after I dial, and during that time, if you have good headphones, you can actually hear the number one EAX whine. I've enhanced this recording slightly so that you can pick it out over the background hum, which I was not able to completely remove. But this call will at least establish it's there while you're dialing from here. The rest of the time, you're only going to hear it if you have really good headphones, but it's there.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording. I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording.
Hello?
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not.
Once again, we heard a caller coming in. It again came over a 2600 controlled trunk, and they talked. That recording in York, South Carolina could have been a conference for people to use.
This is a recording.
So let me turn up the volume and play the part of that last call where I'm dialing the last few digits and we're waiting for the cut through to the York trunk. You can hear the one EAX whine sound pretty clearly when I turn it up. Also, you'll notice that while this switch sounds a lot like an ESC, you don't hear the dial pulsing out, even though that's what it's doing.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service.
Now, this is a GTE automatic electric switch. It no doubt replaced one of their steps, which from the coin phones had semi-dial tone first. That's the system where you pick up the phone, get a dial tone, but cannot even dial operator until you put in a dime. My question is, when this electronic switch cut in, did they at that point offer dial tone first right away? Or was there a period where even from this electronic switch, you had to put in a dime to be able to dial operator on the dial tone? It certainly does offer coin-free access to the operator now. So here's a recording of picking up, not putting in a coin, and asking the operator to connect me to a number in New York City. And here you will see a telephone culture clash because we're calling a panel, and panels ring to their busy signal. It's something the South Carolina operator rarely, if ever, hears, and so just to be sure, she tries the number again.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not in.
Hello?
Operator.
Yes, could you get me area code 212-877-3552? And I want to call collect.
Okay, now wait a minute. You're fading in and out. You want 212-877-3552?
Right.
Okay, now you gonna call collect paper or what?
I want to call collect.
Your name?
Evan, E-V-A-N.
I can't hear you.
First name Evan, E-V-A-N.
Okay, I need a last name, please.
Last name.
Thank you. Hold on just a moment. It sounded like it was gonna ring. I am reaching busy right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here's the sound of picking up a phone and dialing a 324 number, that's a number in the same office, without putting a coin in. You might notice that after we dial each of the first 3 digits, there's a loud central office click. Then when we get to the 4th digit, it puts on a reorder tone. After that, I'll hang up, get a new dial tone, put my coin in, and dial my own 324 number. Well, there's no need to dial 119 here. Just dialing your own number will give you busy. Then when you hang up, it rings. When you pick up, there's the tick tone. No special code required. Just some details I think are worth mentioning. When I tried dialing a local number without a coin in the box, the central office clicked right at the tail end of each of the first 3 digits I dialed, and on the 4th, it didn't click, but it put on a reorder. Now, with a dime in the phone, the central office clicked at the end of the first digit I dialed. Click. But that apparently is how the dime was detected, because as I dialed on, no more clicks. So one thing we can say is that the one EAX here is nowhere near as elegant as the ESC in detecting whether your dime is present because it's actually having to do something. It's probably making a standard ground test after each of the first 3 digits you dial. But it certainly compares to ESC in dial tone speed. And notice, by the way, when I hung up on that first reorder from not putting the coin in and got a new dial tone, it kind of came on with fewer clicks. Here's picking up and getting a dial tone from scratch. All right, sounds like that, very fast. It's immediate and it makes kind of a double or triple click. But when I hung up on the reorder that it gave me for lack of a dime, the tone just kind of came back immediately, as if my line stayed on the digit receiver the whole time. You know, the number 1A ESS had a thing similar to that it would do. When a customer would start to dial a number and then quit in the middle of dialing, hang up, and try to get a new dial tone, it had a way of holding the customer's line and putting on a new dial tone without ever taking him off the digit receiver. In theory, it would have saved time, but this is what it really sounded like. I'm going to start to dial a number, and then abandon the call in the middle of the dialing, and then try to get a new dial tone. Notice how long it takes for me to get my second dial tone. Did you hear that long pause before the dial tone came back? In this Western Electric 1A ESS way of getting the customer a new dial tone without having to start from scratch, the dial tone comes back on without a click, but it takes almost 1¼ seconds, and that is longer than it would take if they didn't have this feature. In other words, it would be faster for the customer if they did not have this allegedly time-saving feature. That feature was called RXHT, apparently for receiver extra holding time, and it really didn't save time. It slowed down customers. Very frustrating. Bell Labs finally just got rid of it. And France, of course, got rid of the rotary equipment. Anyway, that was from the Bell System's main electronic switch in the network at the time. Let's get back to the GTE electronic switch in Rock Hill. From the Rock Hill step, there was a callback circuit on 119, and I was actually able to do a few things with it. I bet for the consistency of dialing, 119 is going to work here too. Here's 119 plus my 7-digit number. There's a lot of hum in this area, so it's hard to tell for sure, but I don't think the distinctive 1 EAX whine is on this busy signal as dialed from here. Okay, it worked, but there was actually a subtle difference which I hate to have to mention, but I guess I will. When I dialed my own number, it returned my dime at the end, that is when I hung up from the callback. This time, when I dialed 119 in front of my number, it returned my coin before the ticking tone. And so when the tick-tock tone was over and I hung up for a new dial tone, interestingly, it gave me that again, not the full complement of clicks. That may indicate something about the way this thing works. Like maybe it left me on one of the channels for connections so that I could talk to my other party on the line if I wanted to. So I was connected to something, and that saved it a click in giving me a dial tone. Just a guess. I tried dialing 119 plus 111. You could hear there how the whine stopped as soon as it clicked into this. Whatever this was, it wasn't answering. It was late. I do remember that. This was the last phone trip of the day, and it was dark, and the next place I went was Lexington, South Carolina, but it took me a while to get there. I remember sort of collapsing in the motel, but just before I went to bed, I checked the phone and was delighted to find that the next morning I was going to have a Stromberg XY with senders to record and explore. But anyway, that's next. Back to this. Now, when we called York 684, this switch distinguished itself from an ESC by the fact that although it was dialing out, we didn't hear a thing. So apparently that's a major difference, phone freak sound-wise, between this and the ESC. Another thing that phone freaks notice is what's called overlap outpulsing, where the switch starts to outpulse before it has completely received the number. Now, an ESC, such as the one we were at in Fort Mill, will start dialing out to a step office as soon as you dial the fourth digit of the phone number, such that by the time you're finished dialing, you don't have to sit there waiting for the whole thing to be dialed out. You're usually going to be waiting for just the last digit. Though we can't hear the dialing here, we can tell whether this is doing it or not by seeing if the call goes through quickly when we dial the last digit. So here's a call to the virtually uninhabited 547 code in Fort Mill, and we'll see how quickly it goes through after we dial the last digit. That was the cut-through. It does overlap.
This is a recording. You have reached an incorrect or discontinued number. Please consult your directory or call directory assistance to obtain the correct number.
The handling of permanent signals here is very similar to the ESC. Actually, the most notable difference is that while the ESC gives you 32 or 33 seconds, this thing gives you 44 seconds. Whoa! Somebody's being a wise guy. Right off the top of my head, that may be the longest dial tone time of any switch. And I can't help but wonder, maybe they had a way of saving equipment that made that rather generous time affordable in this thing. It's too late to find out now.
I'm sorry, you have not completed dialing within the allotted time. Please hang up and dial again. This is a recording.
From the Rock Hill step, 112 was a test number that tested your dial speed, although you could barely tell it was doing anything. Sounded pitiful. Well, they have one here that sounds a little more respectable. It's kind of funny to hear an electronic office like this connecting you to a dial speed test, but that's what happened. Here's a call to the dial speed test on 112, and this one, I had to coax it, but it actually gave me all three signals. The single beep meaning my dial too slow, the double beep meaning it's right, and the triple beep meaning it's too fast. This is still the test dial tone. Notice that when I hang up from this, I again get one of those immediate real dial tones, on which I will dial 113 for directory assistance. It is getting so late at night that she answers and puts me on hold. Hello? Oh well. I'm going to try another 11X code.
We're sorry, problem in completing your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator to help you. This is a recording. 8037. We're sorry, but we have a problem in completing your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator to help you. This is a recording. 8037.
Played the recording twice and returned my dime and gave me a new dial tone. Now, 8037. That is a long-distance recording ID. What that means is one of two things. The toll center is in this building and is a step toll center that rings like this. Or that's how it used to be, and now the number one EAX we're calling from is the toll center, and that ring you just heard is left over from the old days. Notice how we didn't find any local office codes that have that ring? I think that this that we're calling from used to be a step that rang like that, because all the operator services from our previous two stops rang that way, and there are no local codes that ring that way. The 32s are not all in the same place. We know this because when we dial 32 from the Rock Hill 366 step, our previous stop, 32 doesn't actually go anywhere. You actually have to dial the 7 or the 8 or the 4, and each one goes out on a different trunk. 327 and 328 appear to be in the same building, but 324 could be in a completely different place, and I think it is. Used to ring like this. It's probably now completely replaced so that Rock Hill's long-distance office is no longer a step, but is this number one EAX. And so 8037 is actually correct. It's this switch. And there certainly is a way to verify that. Let's look for some signs. First of all, in the last stop, I was able to defeat the toll restriction by going through the callback circuit, and we actually got to hear a call go through the long-distance tandem. We might want to take a closer listen to that call right now.
Number.
366 something something 99.
Thank you.
Aha, gotcha. It is a number one EAX tandem handling the 1 Plus.
Thank you.
That's hard to hear, but it's basically this. Yeah, so now we know. And what that means is that if I go to my long-distance recordings, I'm going to find some calls going through the Rock Hill tandem from New York. Ben and I called every toll center, and there are going to be at least 2 exchanges in the Rock Hill, Fort Mill area that we dialed from New York. Turns out Ben made the recording. It's not as high quality as those calls to the 315 area, but let's pull up the long-distance calls made from New York to this part of the country in the summer of 1977, and we're going to hear this switch in action from New York. Now, the route for all of the following calls is my Manhattan East Side Crossbar 5 line to Forest Hills Crossbar Tandem,
21233,
to Columbia 4A,
8032,
to Rock Hill number 1 EAX Tandem,
8037.
to the destination step. Here's a call Ben made to the 547 step in Fort Mill. You'll never guess how this call ends up. Actually, you will.
This is a recording. You have reached an incorrect or discontinued number. Please consult your directory or call direct assistance to obtain the correct number. This is a recording. You have reached an incorrect or discontinued number. Please consult your directory or call directory assistance to obtain the correct number.
The other place Ben called in the Rock Hill area was 366, our last stop. There's that West Los Angeles type ring again, which actually sounded a little better than this. We recorded at too high a volume on this tape. Now, unlike me, Ben found a non-working number in 366.
The number you have reached is not in service at this time and may have been changed. If you need assistance, stay on the line and an operator will answer. This is a recording, 803-366. Is that the number you're dialing?
Yes, 366-2574.
There's no one in Rock Hill that has that number.
Okay, I'll check. Thank you.
What number are you dialing, please?
366-2574.
2574.
Yes.
Just a moment. So that's a vacant number, 366-2574.
Thank you. I'll check again.
All right. What number did you dial, please? Hello?
What a wonderful network. I was going to say something, but I just had to listen to the carrier noise and the crosstalk there. Operator roulette without even trying. It was doing that by itself. Now, before we get off the subject of the West Los Angeles type tone plant, there is another place in the Carolinas that has this tone. It's in the area of what is one of the coolest independent phone companies ever. They have one area that has a number of exchanges that are all local to each other, which we actually heard earlier in this month, March 1977. But they also cover a few exchanges that are out by the beach, and they have their own local calling area. It's smaller, so instead of senderizing the steps, they use direct control. But it's the same phone company, and here is an intra-office call within their office that has this same West Los Angeles ring that 366 had. There it is, right up close. This time from a very small office. And by the way, I just have to play you the intercept recording because it's a familiar voice. I feel like I'm going to be bringing on a beloved recording artist here. Here's intercept in this same office.
This is a recorded announcement from Manteo, North Carolina. The number you have dialed has been changed or disconnected. Please check your directory or call directory assistance. Thank you.
Back to the Rock Hill local area, Ben also called York 684 from New York City. But York, even though it's a local call from Rock Hill, is not in the Rock Hill long distance sector. It's actually a cross-boundary office in South Carolina, but its long distance calling goes through North Carolina. So here are two calls to York, South Carolina, which is a small Bell System CDO, from my east side line through Forest Hills,
21233,
Columbia 4A,
8032,
and then it goes through either Charlotte 4A
7042.
or Gastonia 4A 7045. The first call to the busy signal is interesting because the timbre of the thing seems to change while Ben is listening to it. On both of these calls, Ben happened to get an AMAT type trunk to Forest Hills, so we don't hear the MFs going out.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and tell our operator that this was recorded. I'm sorry, the number...
And Ben found a vacant number, not a vacant level. You could hear it trip in there.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is...
Well, on that note, or I should say, on that rat note, I think it's time to close out this program.
You're not a recording.
The next stop is Lexington, South Carolina, a Stromberg XY that's senderized. It's pretty cool. The only one I've ever seen outside of Prince William County, Virginia. And it has kind of a mix of Stromberg switching equipment, but more general-sounding independent tones.